Hello viewers and welcome back to SaharaTV. My name is David Miskis. On this segment we're going to be talking about the Central African Republic and most specifically the updates on the situation yesterday of the resignation of the President and Prime Minister of the country. With me to discuss this and other subjects on the topic is Mr. Eugene Pehoua-Pelema, a basketball player from the Central African Republic who played on the national team and traveled with them in 1988 to the Summer Olympics in Seoul, Korea. He also is the founder and owner of the African Education Sports, which is a foundation that creates scholarships for African children to come to the U.S. to play sports and to continue on with their education. He also is a political analyst and will be sharing his views on this topic today. Thank you, Mr. Pelema, for being with us here today.
Thank you, David, for having me on your show.
Yes, sir. So to start out, of course, the most recent updated situation was the resignation of the President and Prime Minister yesterday. And a lot of people think this is going to be quite the game changer, of course, as Michel and his government came to power in March 2013. And now, due to the fact that he was unable to control instability and bring order to the country, he has now resigned along with the Prime Minister. What are your thoughts on this as far as the country going forward? Do you believe it will still take some time to bring the country back to order? Is this a significant step to at least settling some of the sides that have been opposed in this most recent conflict?
I mean, yesterday, as you have seen, you have a lot of people that were happy that President Djotodia and the Prime Minister Changa resigned. But as you were mentioning, on my point of view, I don't think it would be enough to bring back that nation together because since, the country has been going down for several years now. That brought that rebellion. That rebellion came in the country, destroyed almost everything that was existing as a state. So the country itself doesn't exist at all. Today, this decision that was made yesterday, unfortunately, was imposed and is not, as you can see, we lost completely our sovereignty. We need at least 5 years from now as a transition political system to be able, one, to secure the border of the country with Chad and Sudan in particular. Secondly, to secure the population, to be able to protect some minority because a lot of hatred has come through this political struggle for the last 10 months. We have also to rebuild the defense force, the army, the police, and the gendarmerie. We have to rebuild the administration. You know, when Seleka came down on the way down to Bangui, they destroyed all the buildings and everything that represent the government of Central African Republic. So everything is down. And then it will take time because this crisis caused a humanitarian crisis. Then it became a security crisis became a humanitarian crisis. Then a food crisis. Then you also have to treat the people that are going to suffer from, I can say, the shock of those, the post-traumatic shock caused by the looting, the killing, the raping for the last 10 months. And unfortunately, this we have to take a long way before to be able to reorganize an election process, to be able to have a president, especially that the political figure of the country were completely absent and let the people on their own. So the situation is very difficult as I'm talking to you after the resignation of those two persons at the head of the country. A lot of shooting, bombing, even looting been going on. You know, people, unfortunately, when the Seleka came down, they came, as I have to say, that most 90% or even more of the Seleka group are composed from mercenaries from Sudan and Chad. Mm-hmm. They came and they loot and they rape and they kill a lot of people for the last 10 months. And this have created a kind of revenge in the heart of many people. Well, that's not an excuse, of course. I'm condemning this kind of action. But this is what's going on, and today the fact that Djotodia has resigned of his position, unfortunately, some group of people it's like a payback, and people are stealing and looting also, stole from the Muslims that have been in the country for years. And we are in a situation that is chaotic at this time.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the biggest fears, even while President Djotodia was still in power, was that he himself did not have ample control of this like a rebel coalition, and then that led to these Christian militias coming up and, like you say, creating these divisions, and which has led to great outbreaks of violence. Now, I have been reading some reports, though, and I want to get your take on this, that there have been some small attempts to bridge these divides, like neighbors helping neighbors and that kind of thing. I mean, I feel that while we'll need international peacekeeping and definitely some type of interim government, I think it's been a really good start to see that some people have gotten past these divides that exist, at least on the top level, between these ruling parties and the Salaka rebel group as well as the militia group. But I was wondering your take on that. Did this like exacerbate existing conditions, this rebellion between ethnic and religious lines, or were they there before, or did this totally create something that, like you mentioned earlier, that Muslims had been living in the country for many years now, and now they had faced violence?
Exactly. Thank you for this question. I mean, the history of CAR, the Central African Republic, I can say the country was independent in 1953, but before that, to understand the composition of the country, we have mainly, I mean, like 7 to 10 main tribes in the country. And we have Christian, we have Muslim, and we have animist. You know, the Muslim, they represent about 6% of the country, and contrary to what people say, most of them are not living in the north. In fact, they're living in the southeast, in the center of the country, and the southwest. In southeast, because years before, it was a sultan named Bangasu. And in fact, there's a city named Bangasu. My family is from Bangasu. And Bangasu was a Muslim that made an alliance with people of that region, and that's why a lot of Muslims came. But besides that, you have a Muslim that came from all over the country to do commerce. You know, the general commerce have been held by Muslims coming from Sudan, coming from Chad, from Senegal, Mali, I mean, different countries, Cameroon, Nigeria, and they have been there. Some of them, in fact, their parents came a long time ago, even at the beginning of their independence. They have kids there. Those kids became Central African. They have the passport, they have their identity, but unfortunately, because of the fact that the Seleka group is composed by, I can say 95%, because I said earlier more than 90, but it's close to 95% of Muslims. And because they came and 90% of those ones came from other country, they have no attachment with the country, so they came in CR, they swap into the country everywhere they want to. They went and they aggress non-Muslim people in general, but they aggress also some minority, I mean, in minority, some Muslim, and they have caused so much, I can say, pain by killing people, raping people, mistreating people. I mean, the kind of horror that they bring was so much that caused that sentiment against the Muslim. But I have to say here, because sometimes I read on the paper, they're talking about Christian neighborhood. It never exists a Christian neighborhood in Bangui or in Central African Republic, or they say they tell you a Christian militia. This is not Christian militia. When you see some young people wearing some alumet and talking about having witchcraft, I mean, people working for them, this is not Christian people. This is what they call the Balaka. And the Balaka, as unfortunately, when the Balaka, I have to talk a little bit about the Balaka, because the Balaka, when it was created. It was created to defend people doing the agriculture inside the country. What happened is the people having cows coming from the north, especially Chad and Sudan, were bringing. There's a region where they have put place for those people to bring the cows to be able to eat and go back. And they come and they go, and it was no problem. It has been like that for more than 40 years since Bokassa, even before that, in the early 60s. Unfortunately, the time going, I mean, those last probably 5 to 6 years, some of them were coming, and some were armed with Kalashnikov. And when the agriculturists people were trying to tell them that they cannot use the place where they grow the crops, they start to shoot on the people, and that's where they create those defense group called Balaka. Unfortunately, those people are being instrumentalized. I think people say about the former President Bozize, and that's a possibility, because the one that attacking sometimes innocent Muslim are not doing good to the Central African Republic. It looks like they try to exacerbate some anti-feeling among the different community. In a lot of Central African family have Muslim members, you know, and you can see in Central African Republic, you can see people with Christian first name, but being Muslim, or with Muslim first name, but being Christian. So people have been living together in harmony, and that's the first time that I see that thing happen. So, I mean, it has been always politicians trying to use a way to get to their goals, and that's what's going on in Central African Republic today. And before that, it was people using tribal against other tribal, and that's what brought Central African on the I can say, I was going to say on their knees, but on their belly, because the country is completely destroyed at this time. And he would ask us, all of the Central African Republic, and we're going to need the community, the international community, as you say, to help us to be able to rebuild this country, definitely.
Thank you for that. One question along those lines, and you mentioned how these anti-Balaka militias may be the work of President Bozize. I was interested in some reports that said that when Djotodia was first coming to power, he was cheered on because of the authoritarian and corrupt rule of President Bozize. And in your thoughts, what were the hopes, maybe your own or of the people, at the time back in March of last year when the rebellion was coming? Was there any foreshadowing of the kind of violence that would break out and the kind of instability, or were people really hoping that this present, that just government might bring something to the country that was needed?
Yes, I mean, before I talk about the Bozize era, you know, I can say, if I can a little bit going back even in the time, the Central African Republic, after the independence, the first president, Buganda, unfortunately died on the plane crash, I mean, or plane attempt. It was a bombing or something like that. Then Dako became the first president of the Central African Republic. He was only 29. But very quickly, in 1966, in fact, in the night of December the 31st and January 1st, 1966, Bokassa became president of the Central African Republic. And his regime, when he started, it was to fight against corruption, but as long the time was going, Bokassa became a terrible dictator. And in 79, Dako came with the French and took over. So every time that there's I can say, a guy that runs the country, is doing so much bad to the country that when the next one come, everybody had hope. And then he went to Dako. Dako was not, in good health. He gave the power to, it was called a putsch, but it was, in reality, Dako giving the power to Andre Kolimba. Then Kolimba took over. The country was very peaceful, but unfortunately some, I can say, the way that he managed the country with the corruption system has caused people, to call for democracy. Then Patasse was the first elected president in a democratic process, but unfortunately didn't meet the expectation people were thinking about him. So Bozize, when he removed Patasse in 2003, people were very happy, because during that era of Patasse, we have a lot of killing. Even in 2001, when a coup attempt caused a coup attempt from Kolimba caused the tribe of Kolimba to be, I can say, a part of a genocide. A lot of people died at that time. And in 2003, when Patasse lost power, he was very unpopular, and Bozizé came, and he was welcomed by the people of CR as a liberator. Unfortunately, when he came, Bozizé, unfortunately, his policy was not to rebuild the country. His policy was more to keep the power, and he forgot about all those problems inside the country, and that's the way that he ran the country in 2004. For example, some member of his troops went in the northwest of the country in Pawa and committed a lot of killing over there. Hundreds and hundreds of people got killed. And he has trying to keep people divided to be able to keep his power. And that's the way that this rebellion got birthed and then came down. So when they came, people were in a certain way relieved. They thought that the time when Bozizé was president is over because some even member of his family were causing a lot of problem over there. And unfortunately, the thing didn't even last one day because the day after they came in the capital of Bangui, the looting, the killing, and the raping started, and it never stopped. And unfortunately, when the Balaka attack on the 5th of December, that gave them an excuse to slaughter at least in one night, in 24 hours, almost, I can say more than 1,000 people died because of this attack. And since then, I think the people tried to attack all the time. The Balaka tried to, it looks like, maybe I make a mistake, but it looks like President Bozizé trying to invite himself in the talk of the new Central African Republic, and by using the Balaka attacking all the time. I think that's what I think.
Okay, so just one last question. So you mentioned earlier about a lot of the militias within the Seleka group, especially from Chad and Sudan. Now, Chad is believed to be somewhat of a kingmaker within the Central African Republic. I wanted to know, can you confirm the role or speak to the role of Chad in the politics of CAR?
Yes, first of all, I have to say something, and that's unfortunate that because of the role of President Déby in the Central African Republic, people from Chad have been killed because of that, and they have to run away from the country. You know, when Chad has his civil war in 1975, I think Gerard Maloum was at the time the president. The war with Hissène Habré and Goukouni Wedei, the war was so intense that the Chadian people from the southern part of the country came in Central African Republic. You know, the Central African Republic, if you see, is a landlocked country, and you have 6 countries around them: Chad, Sudan, South Sudan, DRC, Congo, Cameroon. So because of that, because of the border, you always have a tribal group are part of both countries. For example, in Chad and CAR, we have a tribal group that is called the Sahara, and the Sahara are more in Chad than they are in Central African Republic. And you have that for other groups, with Congo and Cameroon and South Sudan and Sudan. And because of that war that broke in Chad, we have several thousand, at least 50,000 or 60,000 of people that leave Chad, and even more that came in CAR. Even myself, when I was going to school, I went to school with a lot of very good friends. I can call them brother, who are Chadian. But unfortunately, when Patasse took over, the mistake the international community has done in CAR for at least almost 10 years, and when you have the first mutiny of the soldiers in 1966, is to have brought troops from a limitrof country to solve a situation, and that's a mistake, because usually when you bring troops of a country, they have to come from country that have no border with that country. And CAR, we brought the Cameroonian troops, we brought the Congolese troops, and we brought the Chadian troops for several years now. And they plan to bring even DRC troops, and I think that's a big mistake. So to come back to President Déby and his regime, they have been part in 96, 97 of a group, from a military regional situation. It was like African regional military committee to solve the problem in CAR called MISAB, and since that time they never left the country. And every time they have come, they have been having not a good attitude towards the local people. So when Patasse was president, Chad has been helping Patasse, and they decided to remove Patasse. Chad played a role to remove Patasse by President Déby by sending troops. Chadian troops came, and most of the troops came from Chad and took over the country, put Bozizé in power. In fact, the presidential guard of Bozizé, they were all from Chad. And during that time, I mean, the people were acting some very professional at the time. But because of geostrategic interests, President Déby has been playing a role that nobody understands. Today, for the sake of the people of Chad and Central African Republic, it would be better than the Chadian army can leave the country because that will damage our relation for a very, very long time, and that's not right. And for example, you can see like 2 days ago, people transport what the National Council transition members who played a role as a Congress in CAR and brought them to Chad to make a decision that is a change. I mean, a decision that's supposed to make in CAR. I mean, we never seen that before anywhere in the world. I mean, this is not possible to do that. But anyway, that happened, and because I believe Chad has some interest, the fact that they exporting oil on in the north, I mean the north, I can say in the southeast of Chad, that have bordered the CAR, and that oil is almost the same oil that is in the CAR. For some reason, they're playing that kind of game that is really bad for both nations. So this is what I mean. Chad has been doing for the last, I can say, 10 years. They have been very, very involved, and unfortunately, because of the fact that mercenaries in the Seleka were from Chad, and when they got in power and when they took over in CAR, probably some Chadian local people living in CAR, they enter those group of, those bandit group, and then they cause some killing and whatsoever. And unfortunately, human nature, they make a shortcut, and very quickly everybody's going to pay for the bad attitude of some people. And this is what's going on in CAR.
Okay, sir, thank you. And unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you very much for speaking with us today.
It was my pleasure.
Viewers, that was Mr. Eugene Pehoua-Pelema, a national basketball player from the Central African Republic and owner of and founder of the African Education Sports, an organization that gives scholarships to African children and to come here to the United States and learn sports and further their education. Stay tuned for more coming up. We have our social media segment coming up later. We also have an interview on African migrants in Israel, as well as our Skype segments toward the end of our broadcast. And don't forget our regulars. The shows will be coming to you as we planned. So stay tuned, and we have more to come.